Okay, it is 1:05 in the afternoon, Friday, May 17th, and the Human Rights Commission meeting is officially called to order. Let's take a roll call, please. It might be easier to just go around and the people who are present introduce themselves, and then those joining us via Teams introduce themselves. So, Liam?
Good afternoon. My name is Liam Waters, and I am a public service fellow in the Office of the County Executive.
Christopher Alvarado, Director of Regional Collaboration, Cuyahoga County.
Natalia Steele, one of the commissioners.
Victor Monalachi, Cuyahoga County Law Department.
Awatif Assad, Cuyahoga County Law Department.
Callie Warco, Cuyahoga County Law Department.
Elizabeth Katavich, Cuyahoga County Executive Department.
Chad, go ahead.
Chad Eggspieler, I'm one of the commissioners, and I'm at Tucker Ellis. Hello, everyone.
Hi, this is Mark McHale, one of the commissioners. Good afternoon.
Okay, so just for the record, we have one commissioner who is joining us in person and two who are joining us via Teams. Is there any public comment? Going once, going twice. No public comment. There is no old business, so we will move on to new business. We've already introduced ourselves. Historical overview of the commission.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for what I am sure will be a robust conversation about the county's efforts in taking the lead to advance civil rights in the region. My work on this legislation dates back to the landmark U.S. Supreme Court marriage equality case. The county filed the first amicus brief on behalf of the Division of Children and Family Services. The state ban on marriage equality had a devastating impact on LGBTQT families. Because of the ban, one parent was a legal stranger and could not adopt their child. Working on Obergefell, we realized that our LGBTQT community members were denied the most basic rights and protections under state and federal law. This was the impetus for the county's Anti-Discrimination and Human Rights Commission legislation. Through the historic legislation, the county set in place a process to guarantee equal access for basic needs. The law ensures that all persons within the county have equal access and opportunity to employment, housing, public accommodations, and providing its citizens civil rights protections against discriminatory practices. This is a human rights issue, plain and simple. Everyone deserves to be treated fairly. The final product that you have here today establishes a fair and efficient process for resolving complaints of discrimination. The law represents the collective input of many stakeholder groups and community partners. Thank you, Director Chris Alvarado, for your efforts to re-energize this very important Human Rights Commission. The HRC is in great hands. Mark, Natalia, and Chad are not only brilliant lawyers, they are also community leaders who work to advance equity and inclusion in the legal profession. The county has assembled a great team to support the HRC. Victor Manalachi serves as legal counsel. Did I put your name? Victor serves as legal counsel, and Callie Wartko will be appointed as clerk for the HRC. Both will assist the HRC with the administrative complaint process. Director Lenora Lockett, who's here today, the Director of Department of Diversity, Inclusion, and Equity, will support the HRC's diversity and inclusion outreach efforts. Regionally, through this anti-discrimination law, the county has set a tone for inclusiveness, demonstrating a visible commitment to equality. This legislation serves as an expression of our commitment towards improving the quality of life of Cuyahoga County citizens. Every life matters. The preservation of civil rights requires our constant vigilance. Thank you all for your efforts today.
Very well spoken, Navatif. Thank you. Moving on, we are to have a discussion regarding who the next chairperson of the commission will be. Chad, you are the current chairperson. I believe we can have this discussion now, but we just cannot vote on it because we did not have a quorum present. If you could have made it, we could have, but that's okay. So if any of the commissioners would like to nominate somebody, or somebody wants to volunteer,
I'd like to renominate Chad, since you can't speak for yourself being present.
Mark, is that okay with you?
That sounds appropriate to me. I'm the new kid on the block, so that makes a lot of sense to me.
Okay, then at a future meeting, when we do have a quorum, we can reappoint Chad officially. But I think it's okay for you to continue being acting chairperson in the intervening time. The other item of discussion was we have never had a clerk officially appointed. I mean, we did. We had Janae, but she left her employment with the county. And as Awatif mentioned, I believe Callie has been nominated for the position. Callie's already does a good job working with the commission, helping me from a legal end when we do get some cases in, and then taking care of other administrative stuff, and especially if we're going to expand into more community outreach and whatnot, I think it would be important to have this position. So unless somebody has objections to Callie's nomination.
I second that.
No objections.
Wonderful. So at a future meeting, Chad and Callie shall be reappointed and confirmed. Okay, moving on, we have a presentation regarding the strategic plan for the commission going forward into 2024-2025.
Do we have the presentation on hand so we could present it? Okay.
It's actually going to be a different presentation. It's the strategic plan draft.
Okay. Hold on. That up on, I'll do it at 15. I'll bring that up for you.
Thank you.
Be up.
Okay, so my name is Elizabeth Katavich. I am a public service fellow with the Office of the County Executive at Cuyahoga County. So in line with what Tiff said earlier, so we compiled a historical overview and also a draft presentation of a strategic plan that we might be able to follow as we reactivate the Human Rights Commission. So just to quickly go over the historic overview. So the Cuyahoga County Human Rights Commission, or the CCHRC, had a brief moment of activity following its inception in 2018, and it remained active between 2018 and 2021. But following the resignations of the 3 appointed commissioners in 2021, it became vacant and inactive. And since then, it's actually recently been reactivated in 2024, following the now recent appointments and reappointments of the current commissioners. And since then, we decided to pull from the original legislation and try to develop some method of strategy and direction for the new commissioners. So broadly, this first slide is looking at the 4 main components of this strategy. The first one is the reactivation of the commission, which would broadly include resuming operation and fulfilling the core functions as identified by the legislation. The second would be trying to identify an audience and construct programs and content that would be both informing and engaging. And then the third would be trying to develop partnerships, identifying stakeholders within internal and external organizations. And then finally, it would be capacity building, trying to build up both internal and external components to try to facilitate a greater community impact. Next slide, please. So this next slide, it goes a bit deeper into those individual components. So if you look closely at the first one, which would be reactivation, so broadly, it would just be to fulfill the core functions as identified by the legislation, with the Department of Equity and Inclusion from Cuyahoga County spearheading these engagement efforts and the Department of Law serving as the administrative arm. And then the next section would be actions. So pulling straight from the legislation there, it would be to elect a chairperson, to hold regular quarterly meetings, formulate bylaws, and then broadly fulfill the original function, which would have been to receive and investigate complaints. And most of all, it would be to document these activities, these successes, into the drafting of an annual report. And then if we go further into the future, following these actions, it would be to record these metrics and be able to understand the full impact of the commission. So some examples of metrics would be to record the number of inquiries received, or in the drafting and presentation of that annual report, which, as identified by the legislation, would be due by March 1st of the calendar year to the executive and the council. And in our last category, which would have been the outcome, which would be the final result of these priorities, actions, and metrics, it would be to enforce the county's anti-discrimination ordinance by resolving these complaints of discrimination. So next down in the next category for the next step in the strategic plan would be the audience identification and outreach. So the main priority of this category would be to simply determine the audience and construct those programs and content that can inform, educate, and engage. And then the actions that would come from this priority would be to, for example, update and refresh the CCHRC website, to make these meetings accessible to the public, facilitate public comment. Another example would be to begin a social media campaign to announce this reactivation, to create and disseminate quarterly newsletters, provide resources that might explain exactly how to issue complaints or how the CCHRC works. And then an additional example would be to award certifications declaring equal opportunity employment, fair housing, and equitable public accommodation. Metrics we could pull from audience identification would be the creation of these accessible resources, working with partnering locations such as giving brochures to the LGBT Community Center of Greater Cleveland, to create and record quarterly newsletter data such as the number of subscriptions, open rates, record public meeting attendance, and designate processes for awarding certifications. And the ultimate outcome of this audience identification would be to promote the principles of diversity, equity, inclusion, and equal treatment for all in Cuyahoga County, and to essentially steward outreach and community events and educational content. And all of these would be ideally stewarded by the Cuyahoga County Department of Equity and Inclusion, as well as the Department of Communications and Strategy. Next slide, please. So the third step in the proposed strategic plan would be to develop partnerships and to identify internal and external stakeholders. Actions we could take through the CCHRC would be to participate in virtual and in-person events and engagements. It would be to collaborate with federal, state, and local agencies in developing these educational programs, public forums, and other strategies. And some examples of internal and external partners we could have would be through the Equity and Inclusion Department, the Department of Law, Communications and Strategy, and County Council. And external examples would be the Legal Aid Society of Cleveland, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, or the EEOC, or the Ohio Civil Rights Commission, among many others. So some metrics for these levels of partnership engagement would be event attendance, presentations given, and speaking engagements. And the final outcome of the partnerships category of the strategic plan would simply be to expand awareness of the Commission's work and to, in the end, cultivate potential cases via these strategic partnerships and connections. Now, the fourth and final aspect of the strategic plan, it would be to increase organizational capacity. It would be to try to build up the CCHRC, both internally and externally, whether that be through actions such as building volunteer task forces, advisory councils, or subcommittees. It would also include considering the creation of an executive director and other clerical staff roles in conjunction with the Cuyahoga County administration, and it would be to expand commission volunteer members. Some metrics for capacity building would be to create a bylaw section dedicated to the framework for membership, leadership, function, and purpose of these task forces. And the ultimate outcome would be an organizational capacity, which translates to a wider outreach due to the improved capacity. And that concludes the entire strategic plan, which it's important to keep in mind that this is a draft strategic plan. It's meant to be improved upon, and it's meant to be added to based on the needs of the commissioners, the needs of the legislation, and currently the path that's laid out before us. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. That was a wonderful presentation. I will just add one thing, though. We never stopped receiving complaints throughout the 3 years that the commission was a little bit more dormant. We receive about three to four complaints a year, usually every 3 months or so. And those are usually referred to the appropriate outside agency, be it the Ohio Civil Rights Commission or the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. And if there are complaints where we determine jurisdiction is valid with the Human Rights Commission, those would be referred first to mediation with the Cleveland Metropolitan Bar Association. Just a minor point there. Okay, moving on. Liam, I believe your presentation is next about conversion therapy.
Good afternoon, commissioners. My name, again, is Liam Waters, and I am a public service fellow in the Office of the County Executive. And as we get the slide deck up, you know, it's no real secret to anyone in this room that there's been a massive influx of legislation targeting the LGBT community in the last year. And here at the county, we believe that we have a responsibility to respect and protect our community and our constituents. And so that is kind of the impetus for this discussion today. If we could go to the next slide. One potential area of improvement would be a conversion therapy ban. This is something that we've seen as part of the national dialogue for quite some time. And so for background, I'd like to give a brief definition of conversion therapy, which is the practice of seeking to change an individual's sexual orientation or gender identity. And those efforts could include changing gender expressions or attempting to eliminate or reduce sexual or romantic attraction for people who are feeling those attractions towards the same sex. And this is also called reparative therapy, reintegrative therapy, or gender exploratory therapy. And the names kind of keep changing pretty constantly as the topic of conversion therapy becomes more taboo. People come up with a new name, but the practice essentially remains the same. So if we could go to the next slide. Title 15 is part of the landscape here in Cuyahoga County, and it already provides pretty unique protections for the LGBTQ community in our region. And so I think it's kind of fitting to talk about that and bring this new idea to the room here today. As you can tell, conversion therapy is a huge problem in Ohio. According to the Trevor Project, which is a nonprofit that works on suicide prevention in the LGBTQ+ community, especially amongst youth, there are at least 72 practitioners statewide here in Ohio, making Ohio the 5th worst state for conversion therapy. We have the 5th most practitioners practicing here of any other state in the United States. Another interesting piece of data comes from the Cuyahoga Youth Count, which was a study conducted in 2021 in partnership with the county and the University of Maryland. Indicates that 1/3 of the youth in Cuyahoga County Care, which is either foster care or some other form of placement, identify as LGBTQ+. So that just further reinforces the importance of the work that we're all doing and making sure that everyone feels affirmed here in Cuyahoga County. And to add to the landscape, there are 3 communities here in Cuyahoga County already. Lakewood, Cleveland Heights, and the city of Cleveland have already banned conversion therapy. And those bans particularly apply to youth, so you cannot practice conversion therapy on young people. And they also apply to mental health practitioners specifically. So the ban does not extend beyond mental health practitioners, and it does not extend into adulthood either. Next slide, please. So a possible policy solution for these data points is that we could ban conversion therapy here in Cuyahoga County. There's a couple of different ways that we could do that. First and foremost would be a ban on county contracts with organizations that fund or support conversion therapy. And the second sort of policy solution would be something that is maybe more relevant to this commission, which would be a county-wide ban on mental health professionals engaging in conversion therapy. And I think a really great opportunity for enforcement for that would be this commission. And that sort of enforcement mechanism has precedent in the city of Lakewood. They already use their Human Rights Commission there to enforce their conversion therapy ban, and a couple of other places as well. So I think that's a pretty fitting solution. If you could go to the next slide, please. So depending on feedback from today's meeting and decisions made by the administration, we could possibly move forward pretty quickly with preparing a conversion therapy ban here in Cuyahoga County. Our law department has already begun to work on draft language, and so a potential timeline is on your screens now. As early as early to mid-June, we could see legislation on a county council agenda, and that would put the full timeline making passage at some point in late June or early July, if we get going right now. Feel free to discuss some of the implications of this. This is just a little bit of background and I'm sure we would like to hear the commission's input on this particular topic. And of course, I'm open to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Liam. I have a question. This is Mark speaking, and maybe the law department knows the answer, but how does that work if there's a conflict of laws in County A versus what the state has? I guess I just don't know that from a constitutional law perspective, because I don't deal with that in my day-to-day practice. But that's the first thing that went on my mind, and I just want to make sure that to the extent something is put in effect, that it's not otherwise, quote unquote, overturned.
Sure. I'm not a lawyer, and we do have some lawyers in the room who might be able to answer that question for you a little bit better. But to my knowledge, there is not already a law in place at the state level that explicitly permits conversion therapy. So I'm not sure that we're quite at a point where there's that preemption happening. But it is, of course, possible that the legislature could pass something. I think. I have Greg Huth from the County Law Department here to speak a little
Come
more
on
on
up
that.
here, Greg.
Greg Huth, the Law Department. Yeah, Liam basically got it right. There isn't any law on it in the state right now. We have, under our charter, adopted what's called Home Rule Authority. So we could put that law in place here and give it a try.
Okay.
do have a
Thank you for
question.
that quick explanation.
Go ahead,
Thank you.
Natalia.
I do have a question about the enforcement mechanism that you mentioned, the commission being able to enforce this provision. Practically speaking, would that still be through some sort of a complaint process? So an individual being forced to do conversion therapy would bring a complaint before the commission, and how would the commission be able to then enforce? What are the actions that the commission would be able to take?
Sure. Well, currently the commission has there are the mediation practices that you all do, and to whatever extent mediation might be able to solve the problem, of course we're open to that. But also the civil penalty that the commission is able to impose is also an opportunity, we think, to enforce this potential law.
So I think we need to update our code in this case to specifically, address practitioners, define the rule, who it's going to apply to, what will constitute a violation, and then what will constitute a penalty, and then the appeals process. So I think, one option for the commission would be going forward if the county passes this legislation. In response to the legislation, look to work towards rewriting the Chapter 15 of the county code, which the commission enforces, and taking
guess,
that into account.
My concern with all this, and I'm not saying that there are any barriers to it that cannot be overcome, but I would think that the complaining individuals in these types of cases would a lot of times be minors, and we would need to consider how parental rights or any, speaking of state level type issues, how any kind of statewide legislation concerning parental rights and consent and all of these things would work into a minor potentially having the ability to bring complaint before the commission.
So one quick thing to say, remember, we are in a public meeting, and we're kind of veering into more of an executive session topic with discussing what legal implication there might be. I think we can continue the discussion internally and maybe in the future issue a public statement. But to keep it at a broad overview, like Greg said, we have home rule authority, and sometimes that is at odds with state authority, but that's to be determined based on more legal research and any laws the county does officially pass on the books.
Yep. But I will say, this is why we wanted it to come here, so we could hear from you folks in the experience that you bring to this to help us figure out how to get through all of this.
I think to Liam's point, there are already precedents for other counties having this in place, so I think the research into practical application of that would probably involve discussions with potentially other similar commissions that have already done this.
And to that point, the precedent that we have is actually at a city level here in the state of Ohio. We would be the first county to implement a policy like this in Ohio, and only the 15th nationwide. Precedent from other places is kind of thin at the county level as well, especially as you get into counties who have home rule charters. So it gets a little complicated, but the cities here in Cuyahoga County that have been leaders on that again are Lakewood, Cleveland Heights, and the city of Cleveland. So
And Liam has done a really good job of finding those legislations and downloading the PDFs so we can easily see them. Thanks, Liam.
Thank you.
If I could just add a comment quickly. Thank you, Liam, for the thoughtful presentation. A couple of things to think about. I think we would look forward to any draft legislation, especially if the county would like to hear, whether the law department or another department of the county would like to hear our thoughts on the proposed procedures. And I would just ask everyone to keep in mind that as our position currently exists, we are designed to be neutral decision makers. And so any sort of change to our jurisdiction, what types of cases we can hear and what our role in those cases may be, that would need some thoughtful consideration. Depending on what the county may ask, we may not be in a position to offer a policy position on something because as of right now, we don't have that authority. So we look forward to it, and I just wanted to put that out there so everyone can be thoughtful about that. Thank you.
thank you.
Any more discussion on Liam's presentation?
Thank
Thank
you,
you,
everyone.
Director Lockett, would you like to say a few words? Sorry to put you on the spot. No. Okay. Moving on to our next topic, the tentative Legal Aid Society Partnership Event. Watef?
Hi again. For the first HRC community event, we're collaborating with the Legal Aid Society. I'm so excited about that to celebrate the reactivated, re-energized HRC and in celebration of Pride Month. The Lakewood Know Your Rights presentation is slated for June 26th at 9:30 a.m., so mark your calendars. This event will raise awareness about the Cuyahoga County's Human Rights Commission and anti-discrimination protection, specifically as it relates to LGBTQ+ community. The Legal Aid Society will also focus on Legal Aid 101. They will be discussing housing rights, employment discrimination. This will be a great opportunity for the commissioners to gain visibility and educate our community about what you do, and which is a core function of the HRC. So excited about it. Do you have any questions?
No?
Do we know the
No. Go ahead.
circulated?
Can you repeat that, Mark?
I don't know where the location is. I have the time and date on my calendar to attend, but I don't know the location, the physical address.
We will get that to you, Mark. We will circulate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
And we have some educational materials from prior outreach efforts, and amongst commissioners, we will take a look at updating those and try to add some recent colorful experiences from, the cases that we've seen and the activities of the commission.
Great chat, thank you. We'll work with you to develop some outreach materials.
Okay, last item of new business is to set a regular meeting schedule maybe we can set the next meeting that works for the commissioners, and it might be good to have before the Legal Aid Society event. So within, today's the 17th, let's say within the next month, by June 20th. Yeah, if we could find a date that works for everybody now, I think that'll give us a timeline to internally discuss some of the things we talked about today and follow up on the presentations.
June 20th works on my end.
Anyone else? Actually, June 20th doesn't work for me. Sorry.
I'm pretty flexible most days. I do occasionally have standing committee meetings on the first Wednesday of the month around lunchtime.
How about June 14th is a Friday? Can everyone take a look at their Friday calendars for June 14th?
So same time, 1 to 2. That
1 to
works-
2.
Works.
1 to 2 on June 14th?
That works for me, and this is Mark.
Okay, then that will be the official time of the next meeting. Same place, Committee Room B on the 4th floor of the county HQ building.
Terrific.
Any miscellaneous business? Oh, and this will be in person, so we can vote on outstanding items. Okay, any miscellaneous business? Going once, twice, sold. Chris, please.
I just wanted to recognize the chair of the HRAE committee, Councilwoman Turner, in case you had any comments that you wanted to provide, but we're just glad to have you and glad to be able to re-energize the Human Rights Commission under your watchful eye as well.
Well, thank you for all that you do, and I just want to let you know that I appreciate you. So I'll be dropping in from time to time just to listen and to see what your needs are. If there's anything that the council can do to support your mission, that's why we're here. So thank you for giving up your time and your treasures. Pleasure to meet you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Okay, going once, twice. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.